If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
A masterclass wasted. This is EJ Stewart with Tommy Beer, Orange and Blue Bloods, an Odyssey original, WFAN original on the New York Knicks. Great show we got for you guys today. We'll be talking about this historic Randle performance that ended in a loss for the New York Knicks. They were unable to beat the shorthanded Minnesota Timberwolves at Madison Square Garden on Monday night. So we'll break down why they were unable to get it done and how Julius Randle was able to have a 57-4 performance in this game. So we'll talk plenty about that game. We also got a 2-game road trip coming up. We got the Heat on Wednesday, Orlando on Thursday. So a Florida back-to-back. So we'll talk about the importance of those games and how the Knicks can find a way to get back on track in that one. And we have a very, very important figure returning to the New York City basketball scene in a major way at one of the biggest iconic brands in New York, definitely related to the Knicks and Madison Square Garden on multiple fronts. So we'll talk about that as well. Again, this is Orange and Blue Bloods. Tommy, what's up, man? How you feeling?
Good. Yeah, as you mentioned, anytime you get a 50 burger, let alone 57 points, one of the greatest scoring performances in the history of a quite famous arena. In fact, the world's most famous arena. It's certainly disappointing to lose that game, especially to a team that is playing without its two best scorers, its two best players. A disappointing loss for the Knicks. You can't give up 140 points to that Timberwolves team. Yes, they made shots, but I think Brunson said it best when they didn't miss shots, but we didn't make them miss. We didn't make them miss shots. So disappointing loss, but no rest for the weary in the NBA. An important game Wednesday night in Miami. Knicks have to, shake it off, get back on track. They don't have many important games remaining on the schedule, but if they want to get comfortable and kind of secure one of the top 6 seeds in the East, they can they can do themselves a great favor by beating the Heat Wednesday night in Miami.
Yep. Big game Wednesday night. Can't take games like Monday night for granted. So this is what the NBA is all about. Sometimes you go in a game where you think you can maybe outman like a game like Denver, and then you go into a game against the T-Wolves out there, 2 best guys. You think, okay, we should run right through this team, and then you find yourself on the losing end. So this is just what the NBA is. Now you move on to this Florida road trip we got here. So plenty to get to on Orange and Blue Bloods. This is once again an Odyssey WFAN original. You can get these episodes wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Odyssey app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your download streaming service so you can get these episodes every time we drop. We drop 3 times a week, but we have another one following this Orlando-Miami road trip. So make sure you hit that auto download feature. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube and catch us on the Odyssey Sports channel as well. So let's get into this Knicks loss. So the Knicks wasted a historic performance from Julius Randle, one of the most disappointing losses of the season. T-Wolves edged the Knicks 140-134. The Knicks got a career-high 57 points from Julius Randle, but it was not enough to overcome a blistering offensive performance from the Timberwolves. T-Wolves shot 61% from the field for this game, 58% from 3. They started this game. I think they made the first 10 or 11 shots to start this game. So the Knicks from the beginning did not have the right defensive mentality. Taurean Prince for the T-Wolves, 35 points, leading them in scoring in this one. He made his first 8 threes in a row. Hit some big ones on the stretch. Mike Conley had 24 and 11 in this game. Jalen Brunson countered that performance from Conley. He had 23 and 10, but was highly critical of his defensive performance. You mentioned, Tommy, what he said. Now I'll play for you right here. Here's Jalen Brunson on the defense from that game.
It's frustrating. Got to give them credit, and they didn't miss, but we didn't make a miss. And offense wasn't our problem today. Defensively, I was terrible. I got to be better. And, it starts with me. I just got to be better on defense.
So Jalen Brunson taking the onus there for the Knicks' poor defensive performance. He was not the only one who played poor defense in this game. They did get Emmanuel quickly, 15 points for him off the bench, but it was not enough. The Knicks got down 17 points in this game. They had looked like they had taken back control in the fourth quarter. They were up 5 points on a Jalen Brunson bucket with 4:41 left to go. and the defense let them down again. Conley made a big bucket. Conley gets fouled shooting a three. McDaniels hits a three. Prince hits a three, and all of a sudden you're down four, and you're looking up and you're saying, wow, the Knicks are going to let this one slip away. So a really tough loss for the Knicks here. Tommy, what happened to the Knicks defense in this one?
Yeah, it's something I think we talked about heading into the pod on heading into the game on Monday's podcast, Monday afternoon when we kind of previewed it. You're riding a 3-game win streak, just came off of a really important win against the Nuggets, and you're playing a Timberwolves team that is without its top guns. There's kind of a natural human element there that just kind of let your guard down a little bit. And we talked about that's something that the Knicks would have to guard against, because even though the Timberwolves are shorthanded, they're essentially playing playoff games from here on out, as are all the teams in the incredibly tightly bunched West. A 2-game winning streak can bump you up from the 10th seed to the 6th seed, and a 2-game losing streak can knock you from the 7th seed completely out of the play-in tournament. That's how valuable, that's how important each game is right now for all those teams in that jumbled mix, that jumbled mess out in the Western Conference. So they came out hungry. The Knicks were, it's 8-9 point favorite in this game. They had an opportunity to kind of come out, impose their will. More talented team. They just didn't get after it defensively. They did, again, you want to say, the Wolves shot lights out, and they did, and they made some tough shots. And you have to give them credit for doing so. But as Brunson talked about, you have to chase guys off the 3-point line. Taurean Prince, 8 for 8 from 3-point land. He was 9. The record for most made threes in a game in NBA history without a miss is 9. It's Terrell Sprewell and Ben Gordon. Taurean Prince came into this game with a season high of 17 points, goes for 35. Obviously, again, you got to chase him off the line. And then it was just the little things. Again, the Knicks' kind of identity has been well balanced offensive attack. They didn't have that on Monday. Part of it was because, and Randle took 29 shots, but I'm certainly not going to fault him. He was on fire, playing incredibly well. To score 57 points on only 29 field goal attempts is incredible. So all the credit to him. But again, and this is something we'll talk about. If only briefly today. In the future, Mitchell Robinson, 1 field goal attempt. Grimes, 1 field goal attempt. RJ Barrett only took 8 shots in this game. So those 4 players, that's 3/5 of your starting lineup combined for only 14 shots, and they only missed 5 shots. So those are the type of things you kind of want to get everybody involved. This game was an anomaly because Randle was on literally a historic heater. So it's going to throw off the field goal attempts and all that other stuff. And they, quite frankly, needed every one of those points. But you circle back kind of directly. It was the little things. Obviously, on the defensive end, Knicks down 6. Get the ball back, about 30 seconds left. Randle, an N1, cut the lead to 3, make it a 1-possession game, is 55th, 56th, and 57th point of the evening. 1 stop, you get the ball back, you still have an opportunity. They force a stop. Jalen McDaniels pushes off on Brunson, no call, misses the jumper. Knicks get the rebound, they have a chance to tie it up. Kyle Anderson, who's kind of the Josh Hart of that Timberwolves team, little do everything guy, out hustles Randle for the rebound, leads to leads to the Prince lay-in, which basically a sealer, game winner for the Wolves, puts them up 5. But I will say credit to Brunson. We just played his audio, and also credit to Julius Randle after the game, when he admitted that that it was inexcusable to allow Anderson to get that offensive rebound. I got the quote here: "Jalen got a defensive stop. We're down 3. It's my job to come up with that rebound. 14 seconds left." Randle told reporters after the game. If we do that, we have a chance to win the game. Or not win the game, but at least tie the game. So I didn't get the job done. I think it's a good sign that after a gut punch loss like that, the 2 leaders of the team, the 2 best players of the team, Randle and Brunson, step up, raise their hand, take accountability. To me, that's a sign of a team that's on the same page. When your key cogs are accountable, that kind of stuff trickles down. Whereas if they're pointing fingers, that kind of stuff trickles down as well. So I thought that was an encouraging sign after the loss.
Yeah, I agree, because especially from Randle, because I didn't really like his attitude after that play, because like he's going after the referees, and I'm like, you didn't grab a rebound, and that's why you're in this situation. And he has a tendency to kind of sometimes lose focus and kind of blame the wrong things in the moment. You know, and I thought like him kind of now, you know, he went on a whole rant with the refs after the game. It took him a long time to get off the court. Like I'm like, this game comes down to that one rebound, and you have a chance maybe to send this to overtime. So it was great, I think, to see him maybe calm down and realize, all right, at the end of the day, I didn't grab a rebound. And I think sometimes I think with Randle, I think he internalized a lot of that frustration and takes it out on the refs, even when he knows it's his fault. Like, I think even then he knew, and you saw him slam the ball against the station because he knew that he needed to get that rebound. Usually it then takes his mind other places, and then usually he then goes after the refs. But to hear him take that accountability was great. Brunson to take that accountability was great. You do mention the lack of shot attempts for these other guys, and you're right. Like Randle was just on fire, and I have no problem with any of the shots really he took in this game. But there is a tendency sometimes especially when Brunson and Randle are playing together. And, you know, we've had now some moments where each guy, not Randle, but Brunson's been out for some time during the season. When that happens, there are these games where it seems like some of these other guys aren't able to really get involved as much. You know, we've seen obviously the games of Mitchell Robinson, but we've seen RJ Barrett at times kind of struggle in like kind of figuring out what that spot is for him in his third option on this team. It's a delicate game because those guys are so offensively gifted. It's like, how do you say to take less shots away from those guys? But I do think those guys need to be cognizant of keeping those other players involved. And I also want to say for this game, in terms of the defense, this is why this is a first quarter league. I know you'll say, well, the Knicks were able to take the lead in the fourth quarter. Yeah, but the T-Wolves got off to that hot start, and they stayed hot because the Knicks just didn't guard them in the first quarter. Like when you come into a game and there are too many great shooters in this league now, and you can't, like Jordan Brunson said, just like beg them to miss or just hope that they miss. You need to actually get stops. So when these guys get in such a great rhythm, like Prince was able to do, like Conley was able to do, like they say, you know, playing in college, like these kids are on scholarship too. Like these are the NBA players as well. So you let these players get in that kind of rhythm. Now when the game is tight, or you're trying to make a comeback, and now you're trying to force these guys to miss. Well, now these guys are in a great rhythm because you've been letting them just get off for the first quarter and a half. It's a lot harder than turn the water off. Some teams can do it. Sometimes you'll get fortunate and you'll be able to get those stops, but this was a night where the Knicks weren't able to, and that's why, in many ways, I feel like they lost this game in the first quarter. They did have a chance to win in the fourth, but them not being able to do anything in that first half and in that first quarter allowed Minnesota to just get in a great rhythm, and they played with a lot of confidence for the entire game.
Yeah, you know, when you give a team confidence like that, it's tough to take it away from them. You know, when Prince sees his first 2 or 3 go in, he's not going to hit 8 for 8 every night, but obviously that's going to boost his confidence. Same thing with Connolly. They let him get into the lane. Brunson took accountability for that. Yeah, I mean, just in terms of the kind of the offensive involvement, Grimes is the guy that I think is most kind of concerning of late. He's played less than 21 minutes each of his last 3 games. Over the New York's last 4 games, he's averaging less than 4 field goal attempts a night, despite shooting 50% from downtown. He's 8 of 16 over that 4-game stretch, but has less than total 20 total shot attempts. Grimes is too talented to be ignored offensively for long stretches. Again, last night, I'm not going to get too overly concerned about it, but still, just 1 field goal attempt is not going to cut it. Get the ball in Grimes' hands more often. We know we can knock down 3-pointers, but he also does a great job attacking the paint and feeding Mitch, which will get Mitch more involved.
Yeah.
You know, I thought that Mitch might get, you know, the team might look to involve Mitch Robinson a little bit more after his belly aching early this week, just to say, hey, we appreciate you, big guy. He had just 1 field goal attempt last night. Barrett, you know, he's going to get his. He only had 8 last night, so I'm not so much worried about that. But it's those 2 guys, I think. Again, the Knicks are just better when they're more balanced. I was looking at the numbers this morning. This was the 4th game Randle's attempted more than 26 field goal attempts. The Knicks are just 1-3 in those 4 games. He's 20 games. He's attempted more than 21 field goal attempts. The Knicks are 10-10 in those games, so not bad. But this is a team that's 10 games over 500, so they obviously the winning percentage is lower. when Randle starts to get up there. And, the same can be said for most other, for Barrett and Brunson. Again, when they find that again, it's a delicate balance. And when a guy has it going like Randle did, I'm not going to knock him for taking shots. I'm not going to knock the team for feeding him. But that's the exception, obviously. When a guy scores 57 points, 11 points higher than Randle ever scored at any point in his career. So just going forward, I think the team wants to be cognizant of. I think if I was Tibbs, one of the things I prioritize over these last 9 games on the schedule, let's keep Grimes involved. Let's make sure that we find, because you're going to need him in a playoff game. He should be playing more than 20 minutes. He's probably going to play 30 minutes because of everything he brings to the table defensively. Depending on matchup.
Yeah, if they're playing the Cavs, then those minutes are going to skyrocket because he's going to be the guy guarding.
You want to get him comfortable in a situation where he's still a part of the offense, and so I definitely keep an eye on as we kind of come down the stretch here.
And Julius Randle, as you mentioned, that dominant performance he had, 57 points. That performance now puts him up there among some of the highest point totals at Madison Square Garden ever. You're talking about Michael Jordan. You're talking about LeBron. You're talking about Carmelo Anthony. You're talking about, of course, the great Bernard King, Stephen Curry. So he was asked about what it meant, especially for those Knicks players that put up those big numbers, what it meant to kind of be in the same list as them now with that performance, and if he can try to have more of these performances for his career. Here was Julius Randle on that.
God willing, hopefully, those are the legends in this game and pioneers who specifically for this organization, laid the groundwork and, led the way for players like myself to come behind them and be able to play the game I love and, be able to go out and put on, that Knicks jersey with pride. So, hopefully, but, I just want to win.
Love the last part there. Like, all that stuff is great. I understand what it means. I just want to win, though. And I think that, as you mentioned, really, as bad as this loss was, and I would argue maybe it's the worst loss of the season, given the way the Timberwolves were coming into this game, not playing well, guys injured, and then Randle scoring 57, you lose. I think they're the only team in this season in the NBA that had a guy score 50 and lose this season. So terrible loss. But I really did love what I heard from Brunson and Randle in this post game. And it just tells me, hearing him talk about wearing the New York Knicks jersey with pride, it just tells you once again, how what can change in just a year. Like last season, he's dumbing down the fans and everybody wanted him out of here. And here he's talking about how important it is to put on that Knicks jersey with pride and to and honor those legends who played before him. So loved what I heard from Randle there. Hopefully he will have more games like that in the future, and hopefully it'll be Knick wins.
Yeah, definitely. I know older players appreciate it when the younger guys, show deference and appreciation and humbleness and talk about the groundwork that's laid, because it's an important, essential part of the history. And the reason why these guys make so much money is partly because of as Randle mentioned, the groundwork of guys that came before him. So I think it's just him taking accountability for the major mistake on a night he scored 57 points. He wasn't crowing about scoring 57 points. He was talking about the one, a defensive mistake and not boxing out and grabbing the rebound away from Anderson. Again, it shows we've seen the maturity on the court. It waxes and wanes. He does get too involved with the referees on a nightly basis. He does, let his emotions boil to the surface too frequently. But again, that's kind of the flip side of the coin. One of the reasons why he's able to score 57 points is because he's, and again, credit to him for working maniacally in the off seasons to build his body up to the point where in the 72nd game of the season, he hasn't sat a game out. He leads the league in minutes and is still able to. I've seen more explosive dunks. We saw that dunk in the second quarter. I think I've seen more explosive dunks from Randle this season than in his career. Just playing it with just this explosion and pop that he still has in his legs this far into the season, knowing the wear and tear and the grind that he's been through over the past 4 months, deserves a ton of credit for coming into the season, phenomenal shape, maintaining that really has been remarkable. So we get, he definitely deserves his flowers on that end. And so not only on the court production, but just, the way he handled those final few seconds wasn't good. He got a technical, inexcusable, but then, take a deep breath, go back in the locker room, didn't blame his teammates, came out, said the right thing. So it's a growth, maturity process. Again, we've talked about it before. These guys are still relatively young men finding themselves, maturing.
Yeah.
And credit to Randle for doing so over the last year.
And credit to Randle as well for this performance, because I actually felt in the last maybe 2 weeks or so, like I feel like since that Laker game, Nick's been winning, so it hasn't been an issue. But he hasn't necessarily played that great. Like he hasn't really had a big game. He's had 20 and 10, 23 here. But like he had before that been on just an absolute scorcher for a little while, and it seemed like his numbers started to kind of plateau a little bit. And then Brunson came back the last game, and then his numbers dipped even more. So I kind of was wondering if Randle maybe was hitting a wall, like quietly while the Knicks were still winning, and then he goes out there and scores 57 in a game they needed all 57. It still wasn't enough. So that just shows you, again, the commitment he made this season to get himself in the right shape and the mental focus he has to still be able to put a performance like that in this late in the season. So Knicks lose this one, tough loss, but they now head over to Florida to see if they can get themselves right. So as MSG prepares to host the East Regionals for the men's NCAA tournament, Knicks are in Florida for a 2-game road trip. They'll start things off with a big game against the Miami Heat on Wednesday night. The Heat rallied in the fourth quarter to beat Detroit on Sunday. The Knicks won the last 2 meetings between the Miami Heat, which were very important. Randle hit a dramatic game winner in Miami to beat the Heat on March 3rd, 122-120. Miami is 3 games behind the Knicks in the standings. They are currently in that dreaded 7th spot. That is the first spot in the play-in tournament. Knicks will then travel to Orlando to face the Orlando Magic on Thursday night. The Knicks also won their first 2 meetings with the Magic this season. Knicks won a tough road game on February 2nd, 102-98. So starting with this Heat game, Tommy, how did the Knicks bounce back against a Miami Heat team that will be desperate to try to get this one?
Yeah, first and foremost, let's note the importance. Again, Knicks haven't clinched anything yet this season. Yes, they're in a comfortable position. They're 2 games ahead of the Nets, who are the 6 seed. Knicks as the 5 seed. Nets are playing the Cavs Tuesday and Thursday. Difficult matchup, obviously. Cavs will be favored both of those games. Cavs can do the Knicks a favor. It's kind of like, as I mentioned previously, it was kind of a win-win. But I think at this stage of the game, I don't be interested. Let me ask you, who are you rooting for in that game, Cleveland and Brooklyn?
I think at this point, you gotta try to stay in 5. So I think you gotta just say, because the thing about Cleveland is, one, you have a game with Cleveland, so you can kind of you can win a game in game 1, but you can't drop to 6. Not that like I said, I'm not as afraid of Boston or Philly as maybe most Knicks fans are, but I'm not wishing to see those teams. I'd prefer to play Cleveland out of all those 4 top teams. Agreed. So you got to get that 5 spot at least. So you got to see Cleveland try to win these games.
The only thing I'd say for the 6th seed, and I thought about this kind of randomly the other day, if you want to get crazy and you want to get funky and you want to think, all right, if they win that first round, then maybe they can in the second round, avoid the Bucks, because I think the Bucks, I think we'd all agree, have kind of established themselves as the team. So if you if you stay in that 4-5 slot and you beat the Cavs in the first round, incredible accomplishment. Playing the Bucks is not fun. But that being said, totally agree with you. That prioritizing the 5 seed is probably the idea right now. So I think Knicks fans should probably root for the Cavs there. But again, from the Knicks perspective, again, nothing's clinched, not even the 6 seed. So they are they enter tonight 3 games ahead of the Heat, and they won the first 2 games against Miami. So if they win tonight, they clinch the tiebreaker. They'll be up 4 games on Miami with 8 games left in the schedule. I don't want to say that's an insurmountable lead. Anything can happen, but that's a very comfortable cushion to work with. It also, I think, importantly, it would enable the coaching staff to kind of limit Brunson's minutes coming down the stretch. Maybe limit Randle, give him a few extra minutes of rest tonight. Give Obi and Toppin a couple more minutes. Maybe get McBride, get him some rest in favor of Brunson. The final 5 or 6 games of the season. If you lose this, then it's only 2 games. Then the lead over Miami is down to 2 games. Then the Knicks play the Heat again next Wednesday. Then you start. Anything can happen. Then you start worrying. Then there's a reason for Knicks fans to be a little nervous. So the Knicks haven't played an really, really important game. It seems like they've kind of been playing with house money for a while. Games against the Nuggets, etc. this is an important contest coming off that loss against Minnesota, going down to Miami. The Heat have been struggling, but we know what Jimmy Butler can do in an important game. As you mentioned, same way the Timberwolves were in desperation mode, same thing for the Heat. They know that the Nets are playing the Cavs at the same time, and not only catching the Knicks is the goal, obviously, but they're only a game ahead of game behind Brooklyn. So if they can win this game and the Nets lose, then they're tied for that 6th seed. So a lot on the line, a lot at stake. Will be very interesting to see how both teams approach this contest.
Yeah, and you mentioned the desperation level for the Heat and how the T-Wolves had that same desperation. After the game, I watched Torian Prince in the post game for Bally Sports, their T-Wolves channel. I guess it was South North or whatever it is. But he said essentially that this is a desperate game. We lost 2 in a row. We're in a crazy playoff race. And our goal was to just go out there and play as hard as possible and do things that the other team is not willing to do.
And we found out this morning, I'm sure the team knew, but the collective, we found out this morning that I think it was Shams that reported that Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards are, I don't know, probable. I'm not sure the wording you used, but it sounds like they both have a chance to return Wednesday. So I'm sure the Wolves are thinking, listen, let's just go all out Monday, get this win, and then we get the reinforcements coming Wednesday night.
Yeah. Like these teams that are fighting for their lives, that they know that at this point in the season, there are some teams that are just not going to be able to go to the lengths that they're willing to go to get a win. And the T-Wolves and Torian Prince essentially saying that he felt like the Knicks, that they just outworked them and they were just going to play a lot harder than them. And that's what they did. It was very clear in this game. So this is the mindset that these teams have that are in the play-in tournament. So any team that you're playing in the play-in tournament right now that's in that situation, like you need to be playing 100% focused and are really on your game, because these teams are playing with a serious sense of desperation, especially these teams that are like veteran teams that aren't tanking. You know, some of these teams, like the Oklahoma City Thunder, like I know they want to make the play-in, but like if they don't miss it and they get in the lottery, I don't think they'll be panicked. I don't think the Jazz will be panicked. The Jazz I don't know if you've seen the Jazz. They were Chris Dunn was playing yesterday and they won against the Kings. So some of these teams I think are kind of trying to get themselves out of the play-in, but the Heat is not one of those teams. The T-Wolves not one of those teams. So when you face these teams, like you have to play. You have to be on your P's and Q's. So the Knicks, they're going to have to come out focused. And what I would expect, which is going to be interesting, is the last time these two teams played, Miami blitzed Brunson on screens, which I thought was what you'll see in the playoffs. But then Randle went crazy. So what I wonder is, how do they adjust their team this time around? They play a lot of zone, so I expect they'll play a lot of zone again against the Knicks. But Randle went crazy against them. Randle's coming out off a 57 burger. Like, I wonder how the Heat change their defensive strategy. Do they decide to run even more doubles at Randle? Do they maybe let Brunson play a little more one-on-one? How does that work? Do they just play almost exclusively zone, which I've seen a couple teams do against the Knicks this season? What do you think about the adjustments the Heat may make coming into this game, considering they played 2 very interesting games against the Knicks? They were different games. If he went off, Brunson didn't play. Second game, Brunson played. They tried to take him away, and then Brandon went for 44.
Yeah, and Randle obviously hit the game winner in Miami that Friday night, the last time they played, and he's coming off a career high 57. It'll be interesting. I wonder if they'll, we've seen Bam, cover him on occasion.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if they run doubles at him and take the ball out of his hands. I would think they'd be hesitant to do that because then you allow Brunson to carve you up on the interior in the paint, either getting his own shot or assisting others. Brunson 10 assists last night. So I think that'll be an important factor on the Knicks end. I think controlling Jimmy Butler is the key. Because we saw him, do damage, get to the free throw line 18 times, and we talked about Grimes. This is an opportunity for him to step up. He's one of those guys when in the playoffs, you're gonna have to stop that other team's best scorer, typically a perimeter wing player. So it'll be interesting to see, what kind of effort Grimes can do to kind of hold that team in check. And Lowry, we know that he's been up and down dealing with that knee injury. Gabe Vincent's been starting a lot of games for him. But then of course Tyler Hero. He
was huge against Detroit. He had, I think, 10 points in the last 3 minutes of that game. The game was a lot closer than the final score was, but he had a big fourth quarter.
And even against the Knicks, the Randle buzzer beater game, he played well in the fourth quarter. So he's a guy that obviously those are the 2 guys you're gonna have to focus on. And then you got the all around immense talent of Bam Adebayo, who in the first game the Knicks played against Miami had one of his better games this season. So, this is a talented team, well-coached team. They'll be prepared and desperate. So Knicks going to have to come out fighting.
Yeah, the Heat haven't gotten the results they would expect given how great Jimmy Butler has played in the month of March. These are his numbers in the month of March. He's averaging 26 points, shooting 58% from the field, 40% from three. He's also averaging 5 assists and almost 7 rebounds. He is playing at the high end of Jimmy Butler's potential. Like, this is final Jimmy Butler that the Heat have had essentially for the last a month or so, and he's only playing 33 minutes a night. And these minutes have been increasing steadily over the course of this stretch. So you come into this game, Bam Adebayo has been the guy that's really killed the Knicks in these games against the Heat this year. Jimmy Butler, I think, is a guy who may wake up and have a big one here. So they're playing at home. They desperately need that game against the Pistons, and they got it. This is going to be a good one. I think that just like that, we knew that Friday night game was going to be a good game. I think that this game coming up on Wednesday, I think it's going to be a similar final possession kind of game between these two teams.
And it'll be interesting to see. You mentioned Bam. What center for the Knicks is on the floor in that final 5 minutes? Because he's gone with Hardenstein lately, and Mitch just doesn't seem, the comments. He's played decently, but he seems a little bit out of a groove. Obviously, the 3 bad games prior to the social media post hasn't played well, he hasn't played great in the 2 games since. Hardenstein has, continued to uphold his end of the bargain, but they're not, and he's done a good job defensively, but they're not the same team defensively when you have Hardenstein as opposed to Mitch Robin there. So I'll be interested to see if Robinson's on the floor at the end of the fourth quarter, if this is a close game.
Yeah, Mitch had a big steal, I think, in the last possession of that Heat game, if I remember correctly, because Randle hit the shot and they needed to get a stop. And unlike the New York game where Hero got a wide open 3, and you're like, oh my God, in the corner, Randle closed out pretty well to make it somewhat contested. Mitch Robinson, they didn't get a shot from the last play. Mitch Robinson was able to get a big steal. So you're right. How they finished with Mitch, who I agree. I really was disappointed in Mitch, honestly, on Monday night, because I really liked how he played against Denver. And guarding Jokic, I thought it was a good bounce back. And like now you got another premier match against another premier center, and he was just invisible. Like Gobert's killing him on the backboard. Gobert scored a bunch of points in that game. Like I don't know what Mitch was on, so that was a little unfortunate. So we'll see if Hardenstein ends up closing this game. They also then have that game against the Magic, and I tell you what, like I don't really look forward to games against the Magic. Like I know maybe other teams in the NBA do, or maybe fan bases do, but I just feel like every time the Magic play against the Knicks, they present problems. They're long, they're athletic. They're not necessarily the best offensive team, but they can guard you up and they can defend. I don't expect that game to be an easy game either. I know they just lost to the Lakers. Austin Reeves had a career high 35 points in that one, but the night before against the Clippers, they won. And they've won a lot of these games. Beat the Heat a couple of weeks before as well. So I do not sleep on their Orlando Magic, especially when they play against the Knicks. Typically, these are very competitive games as well.
Do not sleep on the Orlando Magic. And you mentioned casual NBA fans think, it's a win. They're a rebuilding team. No, like you watch those games, you watch the Magic play night to night. They play hard, they play well. They don't have the results. They haven't been able to finish. A lot of games they've blown 4-point leads, multiple possession leads late in games because they don't have a closer. They play 20-year-old kids. But you mentioned that Clippers game. The Lakers loss was the second night of a back-to-back in LA. That first night, the Saturday game in LA, Markelle Fultz, 28 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals. He's playing the best basketball probably of his NBA career the last couple weeks. Wendell Carter went for 27 and 12 in that game. Franz Wagner, he's one of the most talented young 3-4s in the NBA. He had 20 and 4. They got Cole Anthony had 18, 8 and 6 off 18, 8 and 2 off the bench. They got dudes. They play hard. They play the right way. It's going to be the second night of a back-to-back for the Knicks. Whereas the Magic, they have a night off. They play tonight and then they don't play again until Thursday. So they'll have a rest advantage in that game. So yes, by no means, that is not a duck walk by any stretch of the imagination for the Knicks. They'll walk in prepared. And the other thing the Knicks have going for them as they make their way down to South Florida is lots of New Yorkers in the stands, as we've seen this season. And it'll only ramp up as the Knicks are playoff bound. There will be a lot of orange and blue in the building in Miami and Orlando.
Yeah, that last game at Amway Center in Orlando, I'd never seen anything like that before. I mean, I know we've seen these games with Knicks on Florida, and there are a lot of fans, but that was a Knicks crowd. They took over the Amway Center, and I get it. It's Orlando having a tough season. Maybe fans aren't getting out there as much. They're playing New Yorkers in Florida, so they made their way. But I mean, that was like an 80% Knicks crowd, which was just stunning to kind of see. As you see a game down the stretch, you hear defense chants in the Amway Center. You see Brunson get big buckets, and they're going crazy. And so yes, that will help them a great deal. They will have a big presence, definitely in Miami. And again, I think that you'll have another really big presence in Orlando as well. So that always helps the Knicks when they head down south for these games. So should be fun, man. I wish I was down there. I know we got some decent weather coming to the Northeast now, so that's good. But I love when these teams make these little trips to certain regions, like they went to LA for a back-to-back, and then how they do the Orlando Miami trip. I think these are fun for a lot of the fans who live in those areas, or fans who want to take a vacation and go out to one of these towns. Have you ever done that, Tommy? Have you ever taken a trip out to any of these road trips Knicks have done where they've gone to LA or Florida to see some of these games?
I haven't. I do try to get out to my dad and I try to go to like the iconic venues. We've been to Wrigley Field, Fenway.
Yeah.
Saw UNC Duke play at Krzyzewskiville, like all
that's nice.
Green Bay. I've been to Lambeau, went with my wife. So kind of the more iconic. If I'm going to plan a trip around a game, so it was went to I'm a Lions fan. I've been to Detroit, and then we flew out on a Saturday, went to see Michigan play at the Big House, and then went to the Lions game the next day.
Oh, so, nice.
Trips like that, I see enough of a little bit jaded. I've seen a lot of NBA games, so the other arenas and stuff. If I'm going to plan a trip around a sporting event, I'll try to do one of those type of deals.
Gotcha. Yeah, I did a couple years ago. I think this was actually right before the pandemic. I did the LA trip. So Knicks had a back-to-back Clippers Lakers. That was a lot of fun. What's funny is the LA trip is nothing like the Florida trip where it's all Knicks fans. So the Clipper game is interesting because like you have a fan base that is very apathetic. So like it was a lot of Knicks fans, but also even though like there are also just a lot of people that just weren't like really any fan, they just came out because like Clippers were playing and Knicks were playing. So it was a very comfortable crowd. It was very fun. So I'm like, oh cool, I'll go to this Laker game. It'll be exactly the same. It was not the same. It was Laker fans all over the place. I'm like, yo, where did the Knicks fans go? We got completely overshadowed. There were not many of us there. Very uncomfortable sitting there with my girlfriend, all these Laker fans. The guy is telling me how much they couldn't stand Julius Randle when he was a Laker. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not liking him either. This is Julius Randle's first year. And we lose the game, and I got these Laker fans there. Yeah, cuz throwing me the L sign, throwing up all crazy signs. I'm like, oh, okay, let's get out of here. This is a little weird. So it's those trips are fun. I like to take them. Different environment if you head out to LA for a Lakers Clippers game if you're a Knicks fan. Totally different vibes. But hopefully Knicks fans who head down to Florida for these two, know there'll be plenty of them going out there. They enjoy Heat, Knicks Wednesday, Magic, Knicks Thursday. Magic, Knicks Thursday. But let's get to our last story for today. And a former Knicks coach is hoping to restore one of the city's most iconic basketball brands to glory. Rick Pitino was introduced Tuesday as the new head coach for St. John's men's basketball team. Pitino spent the past 3 seasons at Iona, where he went 64-22. He made 2 NCAA tournament appearances with the Gales. He left Louisville after the 2017 season, somewhat in shame amid a slew of scandals. The final one being a pay-to-play scheme that involved the FBI investigation. There was also a scandal in 2015 involving a former escort who said that she was hired by Louisville assistants to party with recruits. Pitino was suspended 5 games for that scandal, and the team had to forfeit its postseason aspirations for that season. So Pitino definitely comes with a cloud of mess, which is kind of where he's been for a lot of his career. But he's a 2-time national champion. He won both at Kentucky and Louisville. He made 3 Final Fours with 3 different schools. So I don't know if anybody's ever done that. They have very few guys have done that. So Rick Pitino, a legendary coach, an iconic coach, kind of out of the main lens of college basketball, now kind of back into the mainstream, so to speak, with St. John's. How do you feel? Do you think Rick can bring St. John's back? Like, it's been a long time. Like, I feel like this has been a dormant sports brand in New York City for a while now.
100%. And for that reason, I'm okay with rolling the dice. I mean, if I look at the big picture, this is a 70-year-old man. What's the future? What's the long-term picture? Obviously, you'd like to hire, the young aspiring assistant or the D2 coach that comes in, turns the program around and is there for 30 years and, has an arena named after him, after like Carnesecca, like that type
Yeah.
of thing is the ideal. Knicks have tried that. It hasn't worked, the Norm Roberts and the other guys that they've kind of brought in and, that they thought could recruit. It didn't get the job done for whatever the case is. So for that reason, I think it's worth it's kind of similar to the Aaron Rodgers situation in New York. Like there's kind of a small window, but they've tried other things. They've tried drafting the quarterback multiple times. It hasn't panned out. So let's go with a guy that brings some baggage with them, brings some luggage with them, but he also brings games won. He also brings legitimacy and a reputation for winning basketball games. Iona, 2 out of 3 years, bringing them to the tournament. And the Knicks, the combination of him in New York with the NIL opportunities, they are that money has been a situation at St. John's funding the program and recruits, etc. That will not be a situation going forward. He will have and access to plenty of boosters that are going to come out of the woodwork and hopefully bring a little spark, a little energy. Because when the Johnnies are good, the city gets behind them. This is a city that that loves basketball. So let's hope he does. I'm interested in your take, though. What do you think? Do you think it's worth a roll of the dice?
It's crazy because I sit here as a Jets fan and St. John's fan who lambasted Aaron Rodgers for years with the Packers, but said as soon as he came available, the Jets need to get him. I'm a St. John's fan who lambasted Patino for I pretty much thought he wrecked the Louisville program with his lack of institutional control, as the NCAA would say. And I'm saying that you have to get rid of Patino. This is kind of where it has to be because St. John's has tried everything. They got the longtime assistant who's a New Yorker, Norm Roberts. That didn't work. They got the TV personality and guy who people could relate to in Steve Lavin. That didn't work. They got the former St. John's great. Yes, and Fran Francilla back in the day. They got the former St. John's great and NBA great, who's never coached before, but has an affinity to the city. He's from here. Chris Mullen did not work. And now they said, let's do random. Let's just get somebody from out of nowhere, but who has won a lot, and let's see if they can do it. I know they've never won anything big, but they're a consistent winner. That didn't work with Mike Anderson. So they've now tried pretty much everything, and nothing has worked. So you have to go for the proven commodity. You have to go for the legend, the icon that is Rick Pitino. And look, I pretty much expect that in 6-7 years, there's going to be some gnarly scandal that's going to make the school look terrible and put this team back into purgatory. But at this point, what do you have to lose? That's where they are now. And that's what's been disappointing since they're to kind of rebrand the Big East, where all these, all the Catholic schools essentially came together and they brought in some new schools, Creighton, Xavier, and such. You looked at the landscape and said, okay, St. John's, they have a chance in this Big East. Before when Big East had Syracuse, something like there was no chance St. John's was cracking through that Big East. When Louisville was in there, where Pitino was with them, like that Big East was gnarly. And Notre Dame as well. But you saw this new landscape. Say, okay, Butler's here now, Creighton's here now. You think that St. John's, they should find a way to be a perennial tournament team. Maybe they'll win the conference one year, and it's just been nothing. They've had a couple of tournament appearances, but that's been it. They haven't had any success in this new Big East. And it's been shocking because there have been plenty of years. I've been to some of these media days and seen the preseason rankings. Some of these years, St. John's had picked to finish first or second or third in the Big East, and they never came close to that. So I think it's an exciting day for St. John's fans. I think that one thing I will say is it seems like this new president, at the school, like he's invested in winning. This is a totally different. Rick Pitino said the only reason why I'm here essentially is because of this guy. I guess they had a connection because of the Providence connection, and they're not going to accept what's happening with this basketball program. Now, it sounds like they're going to try to save some of this money by maybe skimping out on Mike Anderson. Because they're trying to say he was fired with cause, which I don't know what he could have done to be fired with cause other than be a bad coach and lost games. But they're trying not to pay him. They're getting sued now. So I think they're probably saying, yo, we can just fight this guy in lawsuit. We're going to pay him 5 years from now because that's what happened with Kevin Ollie in UConn. But I think they're thinking we can save some money now and use this money on Rick, use this money on the facilities. And I'm hoping that they find a way to, once again, kind of make MSG their home court. Like, I think one of the things that has really hurt St. John's is, watching them play so many marquee games at Carnesecca Arena. And it's ridiculous. I grew up when St. John's played, about half their home games at Madison Square Garden. Now it's about 4 or 5. Like, that's not going to happen with Rick Pitino. I assure you he's going to make sure they're playing at the Garden. And he actually spoke about what it means to be the head coach of St. John's and playing at Madison Square Garden. So I want you guys to hear this from Rick Pitino.
And today, for me, this is one of the most special moments of my life. I've been to the Garden as the Knicks coach. I've been to the Garden as the Providence coach. And now I get to represent something really, really special. And it's not about when or if. It's going to happen for St. John's. And it's going to happen in a big way. But the first thing you have to do is you have to build a culture, not only a culture of great basketball, exciting basketball, but a culture of academic excellence, a culture of treating everybody with great respect, a work ethic second to none, giving every ounce of perspiration you have in you for the name on the front, St. John's.
I tell you what, like, the one thing I will say about Rick, and I've always said this about him, is he's one of my favorite coaches. I say all the stuff about him being, slimy and potentially, getting this team in problem. Like, he's a phenomenal coach. The way he prepares his team, the way he adjusts in games, I've loved watching Louisville. I was a little too young when he was at Kentucky. I've always loved watching Louisville play because, he's one of the best coaches. But you hear that and you say, yeah, I know why this guy is successful. Like, I know why this guy wins games, because that makes you want to run through a wall right there. You say, let's go, let's get it.
It's very rare that you get a guy that excels in the X's and O's and the motivation talking stuff.
Exactly.
And he checks both boxes. And that's a rare commodity. And that's one of the reasons why he's been successful every single place he's gone, is his teams have won. And I think the other, as far as the scandal stuff, I listen, the prostitutes and all that other stuff, that's inexcusable. But as far as the pay for play, I always thought the NCAA was a joke to begin with, So I don't want to bash them too much because it's a greedy corporation, and the rules that they had in place basically enforced an unfair caste system. So I don't want to make too big of a deal about that.
Right.
But I will say, if you're going to get Pitino, now's a good time to get him, because the NCAA is in so much flux. The transfer portal changes the game to such an extent. The NIL stuff changes the game to such an extent. I mean, you watch these NCAA games, it's almost like every other player on the court, they'll go to the free throw line and the announcer will say, started his career in Louisville, transferred to Kentucky, and now is back at, University of Charleston for a senior year.
Yeah.
2 or 3 colleges. Every one of these guys, it seems, I'm amazed, and 10, 15 years ago, a guy would get, maybe he would only stay for a year, but rarely would you see a good player start somewhere else and then finish, and let alone with a stop in between, because you had to sit out that transfer year. That no longer being an issue, and that transfer portal changes everything. And this Johnnies are going to have good roster spots. They're going to have roster spots available. And Pitino will get guys to come, whether those guys stay healthy. He's talking about academics. I don't think they're going to win any spelling bees.
No academic All-Americans on this one.
I wouldn't put my money on any academic All-Stars, but he will get guys that can shoot the ball. He will get guys that defend. He will get guys that are long and lean and can get up and down the floor and play the style, the brand of basketball that he wants to play, and he'll demand that they play that way, because he comes with that gravitas, that reputation. Guys will want to play for him and play hard for him. And especially, it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy if and when the Johnnies start winning games, then that kind of only compounds on itself. NIL money starts rolling in. St. John's plays more games at the Garden. You talked about it. My family had season tickets for Johnnies, late 90s, early 2000s. I was at the Garden when Bootsy Thornton scored, I think it was 42 to beat Duke.
Oh, yeah.
That was a big game. Those were big games. I mean, there was, it's hard for younger fans, 20-year-old kids to imagine. And forget the Mullen Berry days. Those predate me.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's like my
when
dad's era. Yeah,
when it was this Johnnies were arguably bigger in the city than the Knicks, and Big East
yeah,
basketball was bigger than the NBA for a lot of people.
yeah.
Just that little run that they had, near the turn of the century, was a reminder of how big and how much how much attention they can generate if the St. John's is playing well.
Yeah, back-to-back National Players of the Year with Chris Mullin and Walter Berry. Final Four appearance in which 3 of the 4 teams were in the Big East. Almost got 4 out of 4 that year. That there was a golden era of college basketball here in New York, and maybe Rick Pitino can bring a little bit of that in this new era here. It's funny you mentioned the transfer portal and the ability to overhaul your roster very quickly, and I think that's why it's going to end up being very successful. I think that
Yes.
Maybe it's not year one, but it could be year one. He could just bring in crazy, awesome roster of transfers and 1 or 2 recruits, and that's really all you need. But definitely by year 2, this is going to be a top 15 program. I'm that confident. But like he said in the post game, in the press conference, they asked him about like the future of the team and the roster they have. He said, "quote A lot of these players probably won't be back on this team because they're not a fit for me," which is one of my favorite quotes I've heard since Deion Sanders in his press conference at Colorado, when he told the players in his first meeting with them that he's bringing his luggage with him and it's Louis, and that they should think about getting in the transfer portal because they're going to get a lot of playing time here. So Ray Pitino and Coach Prime clearly cut from the same cloth there.
I haven't seen it. Has Soriano said anything? I know he was, if Anderson's gone, I'm not coming back. Has he said anything since the Pitino?
Yeah, I've not seen him say anything. I know he was very upset about
Right.
Mike Anderson leaving, which is understandable. I mean, he came here, because Anderson came here. So here I have a quote here. Rick Pitino, he said, "I asked the character of the basketball team, to be honest, I don't get into glowing reports, but I did get a glowing report on Joel Soriano. We're going to bring him to a level he didn't think he could reach." So Pitino wants him, which makes sense. That's if there's any guy on this team you want to keep, I think you want to keep a guy who's a walking double-double in Joel Soriano. But yeah, I know he was very upset about what happened to Mike Anderson. I'm sure this lawsuit is going to help their case.
Yeah.
Rick Pitino is, as you guys heard in that quote, I mean, he is a very persuasive person. He's a charismatic guy. He's a guy easy to like until you hear about some of the things he gets caught up into. But so I think there's a chance maybe he can do this. Actually, I see here that he named Soriano the captain of the team, which is a big move there right there. So maybe they've already squashed whatever issues Soriano may have had with the firing of Mike Anderson. But exciting day, St. John's, exciting day for New York basketball. Rick Pitino, I think, is one of the, even though I know his Knicks tenure was short, like just because him being a Long Islander, him coaching the Knicks, him just being a Big East coach at Providence and Louisville for a long time was in the Big East as well. I just think he's one of the important New York figures when it comes to basketball. So him being head coach of St. John's, I think, is awesome.
That accent is a guy that should coach St. John's. You just hear.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good place to leave it here. So that's going to do it for this episode of Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast, Odyssey WFAN original. You can get these episodes wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Odyssey app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service to get these episodes every time we drop. We'll be back following this Florida road trip to recap what happened between the Heat and Knicks and the Magic and Knicks. Make sure you also check us out on YouTube. You can find us at the Odyssey Sports channel. Tommy, let people know where they can find you.
At Tommy Beer on Twitter.
You can find me, EJ_Stewart on Twitter, Action EJ on Instagram. That'll do it for now. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. For Tommy, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.